The HMS Dauntless drifted through the dark emptiness of space, its hull bearing the scars of 75 years of faithful service. Under the harsh light of a distant sun, patches of rust-colored paint showed through the newer coating, giving the massive warship the appearance of a well-worn warrior rather than a proper military vessel. Captain Tom Reed stood at the bridge's main viewport, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. At 60 years old, he shared many similarities with his beloved ship. Both were considered too old by modern standards. Both had been pushed toward retirement multiple times, and both had stubbornly refused to give up their duties as guardians of human space. "Status report," Reed called out, his voice carrying the quiet authority of decades of command. "All systems functioning within acceptable parameters, sir," replied Lieutenant Wilson from her station. The young officer's definition of acceptable had changed dramatically since her assignment to the Dauntless 6 months ago. Fresh from the academy, she had initially been horrified by the ship's condition. Now she understood that acceptable on the Dauntless meant still working despite all odds. The ship's bridge hummed with the sound of old-style mechanical switches and buttons, a far cry from the neural interfaces and holographic controls of modern vessels. Reed preferred it this way. "You couldn't trust a computer to think for you," he always said. "A ship needed to be felt through your hands and understood through experience." Down in engineering, Chief Engineer Mike Miller was performing his daily miracle of keeping the ancient systems running. His workspace looked more like a mad scientist's laboratory than a proper engine room. Spare parts from 3 different decades cluttered every surface, and hand-drawn modifications covered the original technical diagrams. "Come on, old girl," Miller muttered as he adjusted the reactor's cooling system for the 3rd time that day. "Just hold together for a few more years." He patted the reactor housing affectionately, leaving yet another greasy handprint on the metal surface. The Dauntless had become something of a joke among the newer ships in the fleet. They called her the Flying Museum or Rust Bucket when they thought no one was listening. The sleek, modern vessels with their shining hulls and advanced AI systems looked down on the old patrol ship with its outdated weapons and manual controls. But Reed knew something they didn't. The Dauntless had survived 3 wars, 17 major battles, and countless skirmishes. While prettier ships had fallen to enemy fire or system failures, the Dauntless kept flying, kept fighting, kept protecting. There was something to be said for technology simple enough to fix with a wrench and determination. "Captain," called out the sensor operator, "long-range scans are picking up some unusual readings from Sector 7. Reed nodded, maintaining his calm demeanor. Sector 7 had been quiet for years, but his instincts, honed by decades in space, told him something was different this time. "Keep monitoring. Alert me if anything changes." As he watched his crew work, Reed reflected on the latest message from Fleet Command. They wanted to decommission the Dauntless at the end of this patrol rotation. "Too expensive to maintain," they said. "Not up to modern combat standards." They wanted to replace her with one of the new Stellar-class destroyers, all chrome and computers. Little did any of them know that this obsolete ship, this supposed relic, was about to face the greatest challenge of her long career. And in doing so, she would teach the galaxy a lesson about underestimating human ingenuity and the value of experience over advanced technology. The Dauntless continued her patrol route, her engines producing the distinctive low rumble that had lulled generations of crew members to sleep. In the depths of space, where the difference between life and death often came down to the reliability of your ship, the old Guardian kept her watch, ready for whatever challenges awaited. The warning klaxon shattered the routine calm of the Dauntless's bridge. Red emergency lights cast an eerie glow across the concerned faces of the crew as multiple sensor stations lit up simultaneously. "Report." Captain Reed's voice cut through the noise with practiced authority. Lieutenant Wilson's fingers flew across her old-fashioned keyboard. "Sir, 6 vessels just appeared at the edge of our scanning range. They're like nothing we've ever seen before." The main screen flickered to life, showing sleek, silver ships that seemed to glow with their own inner light. They moved with impossible grace, their hulls unmarked by any visible engines or weapons. Compared to these ethereal vessels, the Dauntless looked like a rusty cargo hauler. "Any response to standard greeting protocols?" Reed asked, keeping his voice steady despite the growing tension in his chest. "Negative, sir. I've tried all frequencies, including the old emergency bands." The communications officer wiped sweat from his forehead. "Wait, we're receiving something now." The bridge speakers crackled with a voice that seemed to echo inside their heads rather than through the air. "Attention, primitive vessel. This is High Admiral Vale of the Superior Fleet. Your species has been deemed unworthy of continued independent existence. Surrender your ship and prepare to submit to our guidance." Reed's jaw tightened. He'd seen this kind of arrogance before. It never ended well. "This is Captain Thomas Reed of the Earth military ship Dauntless. We are a sovereign vessel in human space. State your intentions or withdraw immediately." The alien response came with a laugh that made the crew's skin crawl. "Your bravery is amusing, but futile. Our scans show your vessel is barely capable of interstellar flight. You power your systems with crude nuclear reactions. Your weapons are based on primitive chemical explosives. Even your hull is corrupted by oxidation." On the screen, the alien ships spread out in an attack formation that Reed recognized from countless battles. But these ships moved with a precision that seemed impossible, their formation perfect down to the millimeter. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, "their energy readings are off the charts. I'm detecting some kind of shielding technology that's absorbing our scan beams. And their weapons." He paused, double-checking his readings. "There's some kind of plasma-based system, far more advanced than anything in our database." Reed pressed a button on his chair. "Engineering, what's our status?" Chief Engineer Miller's voice came back strained but determined. "The old girl's ready for a fight, Captain. But those ships out there, they're running on tech that makes us look like we're paddling a rowboat." "Options?" Reed asked his bridge crew, studying the tactical display where the alien ships continued their elegant dance of intimidation. "Nearest human military vessel is 3 days away at best speed," Wilson reported grimly. "We're on our own." High Admiral Vale's voice returned, dripping with condescension. "Your silence indicates acceptance of your inferior status. Prepare to be boarded. Resistance will only result in unnecessary damage to your obsolete vessel." Reed stood from his chair, his eyes fixed on the magnificent alien ships. In all his years of service, he'd learned one crucial lesson. The more someone showed off, the more they were compensating for something. These aliens, with all their advanced technology, had just made their first mistake. They'd assumed that older meant weaker. "All hands, battle stations," Reed commanded, his voice carrying through every compartment of his faithful old ship. "Engineering, give us everything you've got. Weapons, prepare all systems, including the special modifications. We don't report to Fleet Command." As klaxons sounded throughout the ship and crew members rushed to their posts, Reed allowed himself a small, grim smile. The aliens had looked at the Dauntless and seen an obsolete relic. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its technology, but in its ability to turn even outdated tools into deadly weapons. "Let's show these superiors what a primitive vessel can do," Reed said quietly, as the first alien energy weapons began to charge. As the alien fleet moved into attack position, Captain Reed rushed down to engineering, leaving Lieutenant Wilson in command of the bridge. The normally quiet corridors of the Dauntless echoed with the sound of running feet as crew members prepared for battle. The engineering section looked like organized chaos. Chief Engineer Miller stood in the middle of it all, shouting orders while pulling panels off walls to reveal hidden systems that weren't on any official blueprints. "Show me everything," Reed commanded as he entered. "All the modifications you've been hiding from Fleet Command all these years." Miller's face broke into a wild grin. "Been waiting 15 years to do this, Captain. He walked over to what appeared to be a standard maintenance panel and pulled it open to reveal a maze of custom circuitry. Remember all those reactor efficiency reports I've been filing about how we're barely meeting minimum standards? Reed nodded, beginning to understand. Well, I lied. Miller pressed a sequence of buttons, and suddenly new displays lit up throughout engineering. This old nuclear reactor, I've modified it to run at 3 times the rated power output. Been testing it during the night shifts for years. The efficiency reports were just to keep Fleet Command from asking questions about our power usage. The chief engineer moved quickly through his domain, pointing out more secrets. These old missile tubes they ordered us to seal up. Converted them into electronic warfare pods. And you know all that scrap metal we keep having to store. Custom-built shield dispersers, designed to look like junk. Reed's eyes widened as he saw more and more of the hidden systems. How did you manage all this? Piece by piece, over decades, Miller explained, his hands moving constantly as he activated more systems. Every time they sent us parts for repairs, I'd modify them before installation. Every time they scheduled an inspection, we'd hide the modifications behind false panels. The younger engineers thought I was crazy, but the old crew, they understood. He led Reed to what looked like an ancient backup computer system. This is the real beauty. While every modern ship runs on quantum computers and AI systems, we've got this old beast. Looks primitive, right? But it's been upgraded with specialized hardware that doesn't show up on scans. We can process targeting data faster than the new ships, but in ways those alien sensors won't recognize as computing. And the rust on the hull? Reed asked, beginning to see the bigger picture. Miller laughed. That's my favorite part. It's not rust. Well, not all of it. We mixed metamaterials into the paint decades ago. Makes their fancy sensors bounce right off. They think we're falling apart, but we're actually wrapped in sensor-blocking camouflage that looks like decay. The ship shuddered as the first alien warning shots passed nearby. Miller grabbed a railing and smiled. You know how everyone jokes that the Dauntless is held together by duct tape and prayers? Well, they're half right. But it's not duct tape. It's experimental nanoadhesive disguised as patch repairs. And it's not prayers keeping us together. It's 75 years of engineers adding one hidden upgrade after another. Reed's comm unit crackled. Captain to the bridge. The alien fleet is moving into attack formation. How long to bring all these systems online? Reed asked as he turned to leave. Miller pressed a final sequence of buttons, and the lights throughout engineering took on a subtle but determined glow. Already done, sir. The old girl's been ready for years. She's just been waiting for someone worthy to fight. As Reed hurried back to the bridge, he heard the ship's engines change their pitch. The usual rumble deepened into something more powerful, like a sleeping giant awakening. The Dauntless might look like an obsolete warship on the outside, but inside, she was something else entirely, a carefully crafted deception wrapped in the disguise of age and decay. The real battle was about to begin, and for the first time since the alien fleet appeared, Reed felt the odds shifting in their favor. Sometimes, he thought, the best weapon is the one your enemy doesn't believe exists. The first alien plasma bolt streaked through space, its brilliant blue energy illuminating the Dauntless's scared hull. Instead of the devastating impact High Admiral Vale expected, the energy dispersed across the seemingly rusty surface in a spectacular display of light. Impossible. Vale's voice boomed through the comm system. Your primitive vessel should have been vaporized. Captain Reed allowed himself a small smile as he watched the alien fleet's perfect formation waver slightly. Helm. Execute maneuver pattern Delta 7. Let's show them how a real ship dances. The Dauntless moved with surprising agility, her hidden engines pushing her through a series of turns that should have been impossible for a vessel her size. The alien ship's targeting systems, calibrated for modern human vessels, struggled to track what their computers insisted was just an obsolete hulk of metal. Their main targeting array is trying to get a lock on us, Lieutenant Wilson reported from her station. But Miller's rust coating is working. Their sensors keep sliding right off our hull. Time to return the favor, Reed commanded. Weapons, deploy the mining charges. The weapons officer grinned as he activated what looked like old mining equipment. The Dauntless released a cloud of what appeared to be industrial debris, spent fuel rods and metallic waste. The alien fleet's elegant formation sliced through the cloud, their energy shields flickering with confidence. Then the debris exploded. The detonations weren't the simple chemical explosions the aliens expected. Each piece contained one of Miller's special surprises, electromagnetic pulse generators disguised as space junk. The alien shields, designed to stop energy weapons and physical projectiles, did nothing to prevent the pulses from playing havoc with their sophisticated systems. "Sir, they're starting to hack our computers," the systems officer shouted. "Let them," Reed replied calmly. "Switch to Miller's backup system." As the aliens invaded what they thought was the Dauntless's main computer, they found themselves trapped in an ancient system running on technology so old it was practically immune to their advanced cyber warfare. Meanwhile, the ship's real computing power, hidden behind layers of disguised hardware, remained untouched. The first alien vessel broke formation, its shields fluctuating wildly as it dealt with the aftermath of the pulse mines. Reed recognized his opportunity. All batteries, concentrate fire on the wounded ship. Use the modulated frequency Miller designed. The Dauntless's weapons might have looked outdated, but their warheads contained specialized electronics that changed frequency millions of times per second. When they struck the alien shield, they matched its resonance frequency for a fraction of a second, just long enough to slip through. The resulting explosion rocked the alien vessel, leaving a gaping hole in its perfect silver hull. "How?" High Admiral Vale's voice had lost some of its confidence. "Your weapons are based on primitive chemical explosives." Reed keyed the comm system. "Here's a lesson in human history, Admiral. We learned long ago that it's not the sophistication of your weapon that matters. It's how you use it." The Dauntless shuddered as multiple alien ships opened fire, their plasma weapons more frantic now, less precise. But Miller's modifications held firm, the fake rust coating absorbing and dispersing the energy attacks, while the ship's true armor remained intact beneath. "They're trying to surround us," Wilson warned as the alien fleet split into 3 groups. "Perfect." Reed's eyes gleamed. "That's exactly what we wanted." Engineering, initiate the pulse wave. Deep in the ship's heart, Miller threw a series of switches that looked like they controlled waste disposal. Instead, they activated hidden emitters throughout the hull. The Dauntless released a concentrated burst of electromagnetic energy in all directions, carefully tuned to the exact frequency that would disrupt the aliens' shield generators. As the alien ship's perfect shields flickered and failed, their crews got their first real look at what they'd dismissed as a primitive vessel. Beneath the carefully crafted disguise of age and decay, the Dauntless's weapons were already locked on target, ready to show them just how dangerous primitive technology could be in the right hands. High Admiral Vale watched in growing horror as his perfect formation crumbled. One of his ships drifted powerless, its gleaming hull scarred by what should have been primitive weapons. 2 others sparked with electrical discharges, their sophisticated targeting systems rendered useless by the Dauntless's pulse attack. "Impossible," Vale whispered, then shouted to his fleet, "Surround that ancient wreck. All ships, fire at will." But the Dauntless was already moving, performing maneuvers that defied its bulky appearance. Captain Reed stood calmly at his command post, decades of experience guiding his next orders. "Miller," Reed called through the comm, "time to show them your favorite trick." Down in engineering, Miller laughed as he activated a system labeled as emergency waste disposal. The Dauntless suddenly vented what looked like reactor coolant, a desperate move that made the alien ships adjust their shields to defend against radiation. "Predictable," Miller muttered, pressing another series of buttons. The supposed coolant cloud suddenly ignited, transforming into a plasma field that matched the exact frequency of the alien shields. For a brief moment, their defenses tried to process the familiar energy signature, and in that moment, they let it pass right through. 3 alien ships found themselves enveloped in the plasma field. Their shields, calibrated to deflect external attacks, did nothing to stop the burning cloud that had been invited inside their defenses. "Sir," Lieutenant Wilson called out, "their command ship is charging what looks like their main weapon." Reed nodded. "Just as expected." Miller hit them with a magnetic burst. "Wilson, prepare for my mark." The alien flagship's weapon built to a blinding crescendo, ready to unleash devastating power. But just as Vala gave the order to fire, the Dauntless released a focused magnetic pulse, another primitive technology the aliens had dismissed. The massive energy buildup in Vale's weapon suddenly found itself pulled off course by the magnetic field. The alien admiral watched in shock as his ship's ultimate weapon discharged harmlessly into space. "Now," Reed commanded. The Dauntless's outdated missile tubes launched their payload, not explosives, but dozens of small devices that looked like maintenance robots. The aliens ignored them, focusing instead on recharging their main weapons. "Your primitive drones cannot harm us," Vale's voice boomed, though now there was a note of uncertainty in it. "They're not drones," Reed replied calmly. "They're magnetic grapples. Old technology. Very old. We used them for spacecraft recovery before tractor beams were invented." The small devices attached themselves to the alien ship's hulls. Their powerful electromagnets, disguised as simple maintenance tools, began to interfere with the delicate quantum circuits that powered the alien vessel's advanced systems. One by one, the magnificent alien ships began to lose power. Their perfect formations became erratic as backup systems fought against the primitive but effective magnetic interference. "This is your final warning," Vale's voice crackled, his communication systems degrading. "Surrender now or—" "I think," Reed interrupted, "you'll find that we're past the point of warnings. Admiral Miller, show them what a real reactor overload looks like." The Dauntless's nuclear reactor, modified far beyond its original specifications, channeled power into what appeared to be simple communication arrays. Instead, they released a focused beam of radiation that cut through the weakened alien shields like a blade through paper. Vale's flagship rocked with secondary explosions as its quantum systems failed catastrophically. The remaining alien ships, their formations shattered and their confidence broken, began to retreat from what they had dismissed as an obsolete relic. "Should we pursue?" Wilson asked, her fingers hovering over the weapon's controls. Reed shook his head, watching the alien fleet flee. "No need. They came expecting to find primitive savages. Let them run home and tell stories about the day they learned that primitive doesn't mean harmless." The bridge crew cheered as the last alien ship disappeared into faster-than-light travel. The Dauntless, her disguise of rust and decay now scored with fresh battle scars, had taught the galaxy a lesson it wouldn't soon forget. News of the battle spread across alien communication channels faster than light speed. Within hours, every major species in the galaxy was sharing recordings of the impossible fight. They watched in stunned silence as a single-aged human vessel defeated the most advanced fleet in known space. On board the remaining alien ships retreating from the battle, crews huddled around communication screens, watching the recordings over and over. They struggled to understand how their perfect technology had failed against what seemed like ancient weapons. "Send another warning to all approach vectors," High Admiral Vale commanded from his damaged flagship. His once pristine uniform now showed burn marks, and his bridge sparked with damaged circuits. "All ships must avoid the human border sector, particularly—" He paused, his pride struggling with the words, "particularly any vessel that appears old or damaged." Back on the Dauntless, Captain Reed watched the long-range sensors as they picked up the ripples of communication spreading through alien space. He couldn't understand their language, but the panic in their transmissions was clear enough. "Sir," Lieutenant Wilson called from her station, trying to hide a grin, You might want to hear this. We're picking up alien broadcasts. They're calling us the demon ship now." The bridge crew couldn't help but laugh. Their battered old vessel, the same ship that modern human crews had mocked as obsolete, was now becoming a legend among the stars. "Captain," the communications officer interrupted. "Incoming transmission from Fleet Command. They're requesting an immediate report on how we defeated the alien fleet. They've been monitoring the alien communications and can hardly believe it." Reed smiled. "Tell them they'll have their report. But first, get me engineering." Down in his domain of organized chaos, Chief Engineer Miller was already documenting everything they'd done. As teams of repair crews worked around him, he carefully recorded every modification, every hidden system, every trick they'd used to turn their old ship into an alien-defeating weapon. "Miller here," he answered, his voice tired but proud. "How's our girl doing?" Reed asked. "She's hurt, Captain, but nothing we can't fix. Those last few shots they got in did some damage to the outer hull, but all our essential systems are intact. The rust coating took the worst of it." Miller paused, then added with a chuckle, "Though I think we might need to actually paint some sections now. Can't tell the fake rust from the real anymore." Reports continued to flood in from across human space. Other patrol ships reported alien vessels actively fleeing at the sight of them. The mere presence of a human military vessel now seemed enough to send even the most advanced alien ships running for safety. "Sir," Wilson called out again, "you need to see this. Our long-range sensors are picking up something interesting." The main screen showed dozens of alien vessels throughout nearby sectors. But instead of the aggressive approach they'd shown before, these ships were now going out of their way to avoid human space. Some were even abandoning valuable trade routes just to stay clear of any human vessels. "They're afraid," one of the bridge crew whispered in amazement. "Not afraid," Reed corrected. "They're learning respect. There's a difference." The captain stood at his favorite spot by the viewport, watching the stars. The Dauntless had taught the galaxy a valuable lesson today. Technology alone didn't determine the outcome of battles. Experience, ingenuity, and the willingness to look beneath the surface mattered more than shining hulls and perfect formations. "Send a message to Fleet Command," Reed ordered. "Tell them we'll need a few days to make repairs before returning to base." And he smiled. "Tell them to cancel those decommission orders. The Dauntless still has some fight left in her." As the message was sent, the old ship continued her patrol, her scared hull now wearing its damage like badges of honor. In the vast darkness of space, alien crews would tell stories about the day they learned to fear the sight of rust on a human warship. 3 months after the battle, the HMS Dauntless sat in orbit above Earth, her battle-scarred hull gleaming under the planet's light. The repair crews had wanted to completely replace her outer plating, but Captain Reed had insisted they keep some of the scars. "Every mark tells a story," he'd said, "and this is one worth remembering." In the main conference room of Fleet Command, Chief Engineer Miller stood before a panel of admirals and ship designers, explaining the modifications that had turned an obsolete patrol ship into the most famous vessel in human space. "The trick wasn't making something new," Miller explained, pointing to his detailed diagrams. "It was understanding what we already had. Every system on the Dauntless evolved over decades of real combat experience. We didn't need fancy quantum computers. We needed computers that worked when hit by enemy fire." The audience leaned forward, taking notes as Miller revealed how simple magnetic fields had defeated advanced shields, and how outdated nuclear technology had been modified to match the power of modern reactors. Meanwhile, on the Dauntless's bridge, Lieutenant Wilson sat in the captain's chair, having just received her promotion to first officer. She watched as a group of alien diplomatic vessels approached the Earth, their once proud crews now treating every human ship with careful respect. "Status of the alien vessels?" she asked, following the protocols Reed had taught her. "Maintaining safe distance, ma'am," the sensor operator reported. "Their shields are powered down as requested." They're actually trying to copy our old-style communication methods." Wilson smiled. The aliens had learned that their advanced quantum communications could be hacked, while the Dauntless's simple radio waves had proven remarkably secure. Now, many alien ships were installing what they called primitive backup systems, just in case. In his quarters, Captain Reed read through the latest fleet command orders. The Dauntless was no longer scheduled for decommission. Instead, she would become a training vessel, teaching new crews the value of understanding their ships beyond just operating them. "Captain, to the bridge," the comm system crackled. "The alien diplomatic delegation is ready to come aboard." Reed stood, straightening his uniform. As he walked through the corridors of his ship, he passed dozens of maintenance panels. Panels that now bore official inspection stamps instead of being hidden. Miller's modifications had become the foundation for a new design philosophy in the fleet. Progressive redundancy, they called it. The idea that new technology should complement the old, not replace it. The ship's main airlock cycled, and the alien diplomats entered. Reed noticed how their eyes darted around, studying every detail of the vessel that had changed their view of humanity. Gone was their previous arrogance, replaced by genuine curiosity. "Welcome aboard the Dauntless," Reed greeted them. The lead diplomat, wearing the insignia of High Admiral Vale's former fleet, bowed slightly. "We come seeking understanding," he said. "Our most advanced scientists still cannot fully explain how your vessel defeated our fleet. We wish to learn." "The lesson is simple," Reed replied, gesturing to the exposed pipes and manual controls around them. "Technology is just a tool. It's the hands that use it, the minds that understand it, and the hearts that believe in it that make the difference." Later that evening, as the diplomatic meetings ended, Reed stood at his favorite viewport. Below him, Earth shone brilliantly, while nearby, the alien ships shared orbit with vessels of all ages from the human fleet. Modern destroyers flew alongside veteran cruisers, each valued for their unique strengths. The Dauntless had done more than win a battle. She had taught both humanity and alien races that true strength didn't come from having the newest technology, but from understanding and respecting the tools you had. "Message from Fleet Command, sir," Wilson reported. "They're asking if we're ready to take on our first class of trainees tomorrow." Reed smiled, patting the worn railing of his bridge. The Dauntless might be scared and weathered, but like the human spirit itself, she had proven that age brought wisdom, and that wisdom was the deadliest weapon of all. "Tell them we're ready," he replied. "We've got a lot to teach them."